Eros glided over to the loading ramp and took hold of the nearest handbar. He looked back as Sima was hesitating at the outer wall of the loading bay. He waved his hand for her to come quickly. He squinted, looking at her carefully. She was clutching her side with her hand. Her helmet had some condensation on the inside. "Sima?" Eros shouted, though she would never hear him. He rotated himself horizontally and pushed himself as hard as he could off the ramp towards her. It was an agonizing wait for them both, him in worry, her in pain of an open wound exposed to vacuum, blood forming a gooey ice around her hand, but not coagulating. He slammed into the wall next to her with his feet, took hold of her and leaped back towards the ship. He tried to rotate around by sliding his hands along the deck and make a comfortable landing on the ramp. As they made a somewhat clumsy ball and bounced on the ramp, Eros let go and sprang to his feet, closing the ramp and starting the repressurization process. He took the medical kit from the sidewall and returned to her. He watched as the pressure monitor on his helmet began increasing, every step wanting to release his helmet so he could talk to her. He removed the can of spray for the purpose of cleaning and sealing small wounds. As the pressure increased, the mess of blood rapidly turned into a sticky liquid. He could see pain and induced panic in her eyes as he lifted her hands and looked down. Eros took a cutter from the bag and began making a wide hole in the suit to see the extent of her injuries. The wound wasn't a through and through. The rifle used was ballistic rather than laser. It had probably passed through the guard and then stopped in her lower left abdomen. The vacuum looked like it had exacerbated the problem. The bruising was extensive. It looked like a burn wound, her skin a deep purple, black, and blue. As the pressure reached 90%, Eros released both of their helmets and sprayed the foaming liquid onto the wound. Sima let out first a loud scream followed by a low grunt and growl as she grimaced and screwed up her face, trying to control the pain. She gasped and took a breath as Eros looked down at her, checking her for other wounds. "Eros, go. We have to go. Just go. I have to get you to the medical bay." He began to lift her from the deck. "Listen to me. Get the ship started. Get us out of here. Right after you're safe." "Eros!" Sima shouted, tears in her eyes as he guided them towards the door. The medical room was 2 doors away. As they passed out of the loading bay, Sima grabbed him by the collar of his suit with one hand and held his neck and chin with the other. "Eros, please, I will make it there. Just get yourself out of here." She pulled him close and kissed his cheek. He continued to the archway of the medical room. "Okay, you get your way, Sima. Just get into a pod. Let me get these off of you." He began fumbling with the shackles and looking around for something he could either break them with or a device to decode them. In that split second, Sima shook him and looked deep into his eyes. "Go. Now." She pushed him away, knocking herself towards the medical pod and him out of the door. "I'm going back as soon as I can," he said, taking one last look at her before punting off the nearest surface towards the cockpit. Moments later, he threw himself over the flight seat and began rapidly bringing all systems online. As he did so, the ship shook as a Fargoid scout smashed through the roof of the bay and bounced off the deck before embedding itself where the control area used to be. With a pause that felt like an eternity, it exploded, spraying a mist of green all around, which instantly started melting the surroundings. "Warning, corrosive substance detected, hull integrity compromised," Celeste announced. As the ship's systems came online one by one, he looked at the hull monitor as the hologram flickered and displayed the estimate flight frame integrity as 80%. The thrusters finally came online. Eros disengaged the landing clamps and began to retract the gears. "Celeste, is Sima inside a medical pod?" he asked. "Medical pod 0-2 has been active for 32 seconds. Crew member Bassarat is inside." He pulled back on the flight stick, lifting the nose, and bounced the rear of the ship off the pad. The main doors were closed, although the scout had made a rather large hole through the Majestic. He needed to only make about 20 meters. "Celeste, activate weapon systems. Lock forward fire." "What is that old saying? 2 birds with 1 stone?" Eros flicked a toggle. "Silent running, engaged." Eros squinted his eyes and squeezed the trigger.